There's something comforting about routine, the predictability of it, the way it allows life to feel controlled, even when you know it's not. For years, my routine had been my anchor. Mornings began with Evelyn humming in the kitchen as she made her tea, her soft voice breaking the silence of our home. By the time I left for the office, she'd usually be perched on the couch, tablet in hand, sketching designs for her latest architectural project. We were busy, successful, and secure. I thought that was enough, but over the last few months, I'd started noticing things I hadn't before. Subtle shifts in Evelyn's demeanor, a distance in her eyes. At first, I dismissed it as stress. She'd always been the passionate one, throwing herself into her work with a fervor I admired. But as the weeks went on, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was off. I told myself not to overthink it. Marriage isn't meant to be exciting all the time. Evelyn and I had been together for a decade, long enough to know that the spark can dim, replaced by a steady, reliable warmth. That's what I thought we had. Warmth, stability, love. It was a Thursday night when the first crack appeared. "I made your favorite," Evelyn said as I walked through the door. The smell of salmon filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of her perfume. She'd lit candles, too, their flickering light casting a golden glow over the dining table. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble," I said, shrugging off my jacket. My voice came out flatter than I'd intended. "I wanted to," she replied, but there was a sharpness beneath her words that caught me off guard. The dinner was perfect, her cooking always was, but I couldn't seem to enjoy it. My mind was too preoccupied with the merger my firm was finalizing. Evelyn's silence across the table didn't help. After a few bites, I set my fork down. "I'm sorry, Eve. I'm just not hungry." Her eyes snapped up to meet mine, and for the first time in a long time, I saw anger there. "Do you even see me anymore, Daniel? Or am I just part of the furniture?" The question startled me. "Of course I see you. I've just been under a lot of pressure at work. This merger, your clients, your meetings," she interrupted, her voice rising. "That's all I ever hear about. When was the last time we spent an evening together without your phone going off?" I stared at her, unsure how to respond. Evelyn had always been passionate, fiery even. But this was something else. This was hurt. "Evelyn, I'm doing this for us," I said finally. "For us?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Don't kid yourself, Daniel. You're doing it for you, for your career. I'm just the accessory you bring along for the ride." Her words stung, but I didn't let it show. "That's not fair," I said evenly. "You know I've always supported you in your work. Why can't you do the same for me?" She pushed her chair back and stood, her movement sharp. "I do support you, but I'm tired of being an afterthought. I'm tired of feeling invisible." I watched her walk away, her figure silhouetted against the soft glow of the living room lights. I wanted to call out to her, to tell her she wasn't invisible to me, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I sat there staring at the untouched salmon on my plate and wondered when things had started to go so wrong. The next morning, Evelyn was gone before I woke up. Not unusual, but her absence felt heavier that day. I tried to focus on work, but her words from the night before echoed in my mind. "I'm tired of feeling invisible." Had I been neglecting her? Probably. But wasn't that part of being married? Accepting that life gets busy, that the passion of the early years evolves into something quieter? Evelyn had always been more emotional than me, more attuned to the nuances of our relationship. Maybe I'd grown complacent. That evening, I brought home flowers, lilies, their sweet fragrance filling the apartment like a promise of better days. When I walked through the door, she was sitting on the couch, her tablet balanced on her knees. She didn't look up. "Hey," I said, holding out the bouquet. "I thought these might brighten up the place." She glanced at the flowers, her expression unreadable. "Thanks," she said, taking them from me and setting them on the coffee table. The gesture felt hollow. Over the next few weeks, I tried harder, making more of an effort to be present, to engage with her. We went out for dinners, watched movies, even spent a weekend hiking in the mountains. For a while, it seemed to work. Evelyn smiled more, laughed more, and I thought we were finding our way back to each other. But then she started coming home later than usual. "It's just a big project," she explained when I asked about her late nights. "The client's a perfectionist, and I'm trying to keep them happy." I nodded, trusting her. Evelyn had always been dedicated to her work, but something didn't sit right. I first saw him at a gallery opening Evelyn had insisted we attend. Liam Carter, a photographer whose work Evelyn had admired for years. He was tall, with an easy charm and a way of commanding attention without seeming to try. I watched as Evelyn introduced herself, her eyes lighting up as she complimented his work. Liam smiled, his gaze lingering on her a moment too long. "This is my husband, Daniel," Evelyn said, turning to me. Liam extended a hand, his grip firm. "Nice to meet you. You're a lucky man. Your wife has an incredible eye for design." I forced a smile. "She does." The rest of the evening passed uneventfully, but I couldn't shake the unease that had settled in my chest. Over the following weeks, Evelyn mentioned Liam in passing, how they'd bumped into each other at a coffee shop, how he'd asked for her opinion on one of his projects. I try not to read too much into it. Evelyn was friendly by nature, and her work often required her to build relationships with other creatives. But when she started coming home with a different energy, flushed cheeks, a bright smile, I couldn't ignore the possibility that something more was happening. One night, after she'd fallen asleep, I checked her phone. I told myself I wasn't being paranoid, that I just needed reassurance. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Texts from Liam, their tone playful and flirtatious, mentions of lunches, late-night meetings, and then the one that shattered me, "Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again?" I sat in the dark of our living room that night, Evelyn's phone still in my hand, the weight of what I'd read pressed down on me like a physical force. I had spent years building a life with her, a partnership forged through challenges and triumphs, and now, with a few careless words exchanged with another man, it all felt hollow. I could have confronted her right then. I could have woken her up and demanded an explanation, demanded to know why she had betrayed me. But as the initial wave of anger passed, a colder, more calculating part of me took over. Confrontation would give her the upper hand. If I wanted to protect myself, I needed to think strategically. The next morning, Evelyn acted as if everything was normal. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work, her smile brighter than it had been in months. I couldn't decide if it was her guilt or her happiness with Liam that gave her that glow. Either way, it sickened me. That day, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be the clueless, betrayed husband. I was going to find out everything. Hiring a private investigator felt like something out of a bad soap opera, but I wasn't going to risk being blindsided. Aaron Blake came highly recommended, discreet, efficient, and thorough. When I met him in his dimly lit office, he listened to my story without judgment, jotting down notes in a small, leather-bound book. "So you suspect your wife is having an affair with this photographer," Aaron summarized. "What exactly are you hoping to achieve here, Mr. Monroe?" "I want proof," I said, "and I want to know who this guy really is." Aaron nodded. "Understood. I'll need a week to get started. If she's meeting him, I'll find out." True to his word, Aaron delivered within days. He provided me with photos of Evelyn and Liam together at coffee shops, walking in the park, even leaving his studio late at night. But it wasn't just the affair that Aaron uncovered. Liam Carter had a history, a string of women, wealthy, married women, who had fallen for his charm only to find themselves financially drained by the time he moved on. Evelyn wasn't just cheating on me. She was being used. The realization filled me with a mix of fury and grim satisfaction. She had chosen him over me, and now she would pay the price. I decided to confront Liam first. If he was as manipulative as Aaron's report suggested, I wanted to see how he'd react when faced with someone who wouldn't be played. I found him in his studio, surrounded by his hauntingly beautiful photographs. He looked surprised when I walked in, but quickly masked it with a practiced smile. "Daniel, right? Evelyn's husband. What brings you here?" I didn't bother with pleasantries. "I know about you and Evelyn." Liam's smile faltered, but only slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult my intelligence," I said coldly. "I know everything, and I know about the other women, too." That got his attention. His posture stiffened, and his confident facade cracked just enough for me to see the man behind it. "What do you want?" he asked, his tone wary. "I want you to end it," I said. "Whatever you think you're getting from her, it stops now. If you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are." Liam stared at me for a long moment before nodding. "Fine, it's over." I didn't believe him for a second, but I had planted the seed. Now it was time to see how Evelyn would react when her perfect fantasy began to crumble. Evelyn was quieter than usual over the next few days. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she avoided meeting my eyes. I wondered if Liam had told her about our conversation, if she was already mourning the loss of whatever they had shared. Then one evening, she came home late, her face pale and drawn. She sat across from me at the dinner table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Daniel," she began, her voice trembling, "there's something I need to tell you." I leaned back in my chair, my expression carefully neutral. "I'm listening." She hesitated, her eyes filling with tears. I've made a mistake. I've been seeing someone else." I let the silence stretch, watching as she squirmed under my gaze. "Finally," I said, "why are you telling me this now?" "Because it's over," she said quickly. "I ended it. I want to fix things between us. I know I've hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Her words should have comforted me, but all I felt was anger. She was only telling me because she thought she had no other choice. If Liam hadn't ended it, she would have continued lying to me, betraying me, and now she expected me to forgive her. I stood and walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. "Do you think saying sorry will fix this, Evelyn? Do you think I can just forget what you've done?" She sobbed behind me. "I don't expect you to forget. I want a chance to make things right." I turned to face her, my voice cold. "You don't get to decide that. You don't get to choose when the consequences end." Her tears flowed freely, but I felt nothing. She had destroyed the trust between us, and no amount of apologies could rebuild it. Over the next few weeks, I let Evelyn believe I was considering reconciliation. She tried everything. Cooking my favorite meals, planning romantic weekends, even suggesting we start a family. But I wasn't interested in rebuilding what she had broken. Instead, I was planning my next move. I contacted Aaron again, asking him to dig deeper into Liam's past. What he found was worse than I had imagined. Liam wasn't just a con artist. He had ties to blackmail schemes, using compromising photos and videos to extort his victims. Evelyn had been reckless, but Liam was dangerous. I decided to use that danger to my advantage. With the information Aaron uncovered, I had everything I needed to put my plan into motion. Liam Carter had no idea who he was dealing with. Evelyn might have been blind to his manipulations, but I saw him for what he was, a parasite preying on vulnerability. It was time to make him pay. I started by reaching out to a contact in law enforcement, a former client who owed me a favor. I shared the details Aaron had gathered on Liam's previous affairs and blackmail schemes, along with the photos of him and Evelyn. My contact agreed to open a case against Liam, though he warned me that it might take time to build a solid case. That was fine with me. I was patient. Meanwhile, I needed to ensure Evelyn's involvement didn't blow back on her too severely. I might not have been able to forgive her betrayal, but I wasn't cruel enough to destroy her completely. She would suffer, yes, but not as much as Liam. Evelyn grew increasingly desperate to win me back. She canceled meetings, took time off work, and devoted herself to what she called rebuilding our marriage. She tried to talk to me every night, but I kept my responses short, my tone cold. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done, to understand that actions have consequences. One evening, as we sat in the living room in tense silence, she finally broke down. "Daniel, please," she sobbed. "I know I've hurt you, but I can't live like this anymore. I'll do anything. Just tell me what you need." I stared at her, my expression unreadable. "I need time, Evelyn. You don't just get to walk back in and pretend nothing happened." "I'm not pretending," she cried. "I know I've broken your trust, but I love you. I've always loved you." I didn't respond. Her words rang hollow. No matter how sincere she sounded, she had chosen Liam over me, even if only for a short time. That choice had consequences. She would have to live with it. It took another 2 weeks for everything to fall into place. Aaron had managed to retrieve emails and text messages from Liam's other affairs, including several that detailed his blackmail operations. My contact in law enforcement had also gathered statements from 2 of Liam's previous victims, both of whom were willing to testify. The final piece of the puzzle came when Aaron showed me the footage he had secretly recorded of Liam and Evelyn together. The sight of them in such an intimate moment filled me with rage, but I forced myself to stay composed. This wasn't about emotion, it was about control. I sent the footage to Liam anonymously, along with a message, "I know who you are. It's over." It didn't take long for Liam to respond. He called Evelyn that night, panicked and desperate. "I don't know what's going on," he told her, "but someone's coming after me. I think it's your husband." Evelyn tried to reassure him, but I could hear the fear in her voice. She knew I was capable of anything, and she was right. The next day, I confronted Evelyn. "Liam's done," I told her bluntly. "He's being investigated for blackmail and fraud. You picked the wrong man to betray me with." Evelyn's face went pale. "Daniel, I didn't know." He never said. I snapped. "I don't care what you knew or didn't know. The fact is, you lied to me. You betrayed me, and now you're going to face the consequences." Tears streamed down her face, but I felt no sympathy. This was the bed she had made, and now she had to lie in it. "I want a divorce," I said finally. "I'll make it as painless as possible, but this marriage is over." "Please, Daniel," she begged, "don't do this. I can't lose you." "You already did," I replied coldly. 2 weeks later, Liam was arrested. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Emails, text messages, financial records. He was charged with multiple counts of fraud and extortion, and his other victims came forward to testify. His downfall was swift and public, splashed across newspapers and social media. Evelyn watched the news coverage in silence, her face pale and drawn. I knew she was humiliated, but I didn't care. She had chosen him, and now she was watching him burn. The day our divorce was finalized, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Evelyn moved out of our apartment and back into her parents' home. I heard through mutual friends that she was struggling to rebuild her life, but I didn't reach out. I had given her the freedom she claimed she wanted, and now it was up to her to figure out what to do with it. As for me, I left Chicago behind. I accepted a transfer to my firm's West Coast office, eager for a fresh start. The memories of Evelyn and Liam haunted me at times, but I reminded myself that I had come out stronger. One evening, as I sat on my balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean, my phone buzzed with a message. "You did what you had to do. Respect." It was from Aaron. I smiled, raising my glass to the sunset. The past was behind me, and the future was mine to shape.